and I specialize in the self-launch version of the glider, and the touring motor glider is one type of self-launch glider. A lot of people think that when you fly, you've got compromise. Well, these gliders aren't huge, but as far as efficiency and speed, the touring motor glider has a lot to offer and very little compromise. And I think you'll see that through this. I've got some photos of a lot of different motor gliders that are on the market. Some of them are new, some of them are no longer in production, but they're out there if you want to try them. In fact, the Zephyr Hills Soaring Society now has a Diamond Extreme, and they are just now starting to use that in their club. The other nice thing about some of these gliders, even if they're experimental, you can still use them in your club. All right, a little bit about glider training requirements. This will give you a feel for just how flexible getting a glider rating can be. And even a motor glider, a glider is a glider is a glider. If it's a self-launch glider, we've got some that are quite fast, a model that goes almost 150 knots, and a 14-year-old can solo in these motor gliders. I've only had one young student. Most of my students are older. In fact, my very first student was 80 years old. He's still flying today. So a student pilot will solo at 14. The requirement is only 10 hours. I've never done anybody in just 10 hours, but I tell you, the older guys take longer. The older guys like me take longer than the young guys. I've done some of my younger students have finished in 14 or 15 hours from their very first flight in an aircraft to their check ride. So it can be done. And with a motor glider, we can actually do that in 6 or 7 days from start to finish. As a private pilot glider, got to be 16 years of age to get the rating. A total of at least 20 flights, and a flight in a glider, in a motor glider, requires that it come to full stop, and then only 2 hours of solo time. We're fortunate down here. I think some of you have actually taken your check rides down here. We have always had very good DPEs. Not every location is as lucky as we are. I've got a new young guy who's not only very good, he flies to Zephyr Hills when I have a check ride to have done, and he will actually, he's only 152 pounds, so even the big guys can get in with me or with him and take their check rides. Franklin Burbank, some of you may know him. Franklin's a pretty big guy, and we were pushing the limits of our gross takeoff weight on a few occasions. Commercial pilot glider. There's not a lot of commercial things you can do in a glider, but especially a light sport, which is what I'm flying. You gotta be 18, 25 hours in gliders, 100 glider flights, or if you're already an airplane pilot, the requirements are much less. You can get a commercial glider quite quickly, and that's a prerequisite to becoming a flight instructor. So other than becoming a certified flight instructor, there's not always a good reason to go with a commercial glider, but it does give you a little more precision in your flying, where you land, how accurate your landings are. But that essentially is the commercial glider has to be completed prior to becoming a flight instructor. The transition from airplanes to glider. All right. If you're already an airplane pilot, it's very quick. There's no written exam required, and you only have to do 10 solo flights in order to be ready for your check ride. So anybody who's already an airplane pilot wants to become a glider pilot, it's a matter of making sure we can schedule a check ride with a DPE. And typically we need about 2 weeks advance notice so we can get him on the schedule. All right. Nice thing about starting with a glider is, one, it'll make you a good pilot, but all glider flight hours count toward a private pilot land rating. And so what does that really mean? If you've got a glider rating, which you can theoretically do in 10 hours, what do you need then? You need another 27 hours plus 3 hours at night under the hood cross country. And so you can theoretically get a private pilot glider rating and an airplane rating in 40 hours total time. The only difference is if you get the glider rating first, you do have the written that you have to take for your airplane rating. Any questions? All right. Another thing you guys know about this, but a lot of folks don't. Even if you've lost a medical, unless you're really incapacitated or on medications that are dangerous, you don't need a medical. You could have lost a medical and still self-certify to fly a glider. So I've got, as I said, most of my students are my age. A lot of them are older than I am. It's not as young a sport as we'd like it to be. And there's advantages for young people to start in gliders, but most of the people who are interested in these have had either lost a medical or have a difficult time renewing their medical each year. All right, operating costs, another reason for using gliders for training. A lot of them have side-by-side seating, very low fuel burn. You do part of your training with a motor off, so it's very quiet, easy to talk. Stall speeds are low, so they're safe. Nothing better than a motor glider to practice engine out emergency procedures, especially those touring motor gliders that give you a really quick restart. The high performance gliders with the motor and prop that comes up out of the fuselage, those tend to take 15, 20 seconds to bring down. They also cost you some altitude. So they're not quite as flexible as a touring motor glider. But with most of these touring motor gliders, with the engine off, typically a restart is something you can do in as little as 1 or 2 seconds. Okay. Gliders, as you guys know, teaches energy management, something that airplane pilots don't get a whole lot of. Okay, like I said, we'll look at some of the different models that are out there, but we have touring motor gliders that are available. The FAA is still struggling with definitions of gliders, and we can talk about that a little bit right now, because that may change, but they are loath to change the rules, but it's their interpretation of the rules that seem to change from time to time. We had a builder who was building a Virus SW, which is our short wing version. Almost all of them are registered as gliders in the US. There are a couple that are registered as airplanes. But I had a builder whose local MIDO told him, oh, no, it's an airplane and you can't register it as a glider. Well, the definition of a glider is very specific in the AC, the circular. It requires for type certified gliders to meet essentially a wing loading formula, and that formula is the max takeoff weight divided by the wingspan squared, and that had to be 0.62 pounds per square foot or less. All right, that requirement applies only to type certified, and that's why the space shuttle is an experimental glider. It certainly doesn't meet that requirement, but experimental and special light sport aircraft, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, don't have that as a requirement. The requirement is that the builder intends that the aircraft can be flown with the power off. And you can basically say that about any airplane. But what we're told to do is to avoid the FAA's ire, don't make it ridiculous. But we have a 17 or 18-to-1 glide ratio, even with our short wing aircraft. And some of the early trainers didn't get any better than that. So there is a way to get a touring motor glider that you won't do a lot of soaring with, unless you have really strong thermals or some wave lift you want to get into, or some nice ridge lift. But it'll still be a glider. You'll need a glider rating to fly it, and it'll get you places a lot faster than you normally do. Range on some of these gliders, I think I've got the North American record. I had a nice tailwind one day, and I took off from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and I landed nonstop in Zephyr Hills. That was 10 hours nonstop on 24.5 gallons of fuel. Okay. A lot of the newer aircraft that are out now also have a ballistic whole plane parachute, either a GRS or a BRS. They have been used a number of times. There are a number of saves. Pipistrel has about 200 aircraft here in North America now, and I believe there have been three deployments and 3 saves with the chutes. And that's over the past 15 years. Okay, some of the obvious advantages of a touring motor glider is you're not waiting for a tow. Okay, you're also able to get to altitude very quickly. The efficiency of the wings are amazing. Our Pipistrels climb at over 1,000 feet a minute on 80 horsepower. Okay. Again, most of your touring motor gliders will have dive brakes or spoilers or whatever you want to call it, and they make it a lot safer getting above and below the clouds. And as you all know, somebody who can fly a glider is much more likely to be a proficient airplane pilot, because you learn that energy management, you learn how to use a rudder properly, and a lot of airplane pilots just don't get that kind of training. All right, to look at a couple of the aircraft that are available in the market, here's kind of the Cadillac of the touring motor gliders, the STEMI. They have a STEMI S10, S6, and a S12 now. We've got some here in Florida. My partner flies one out of Bernie, Texas, and he loves it. It's great at soaring, but it's a lot of work to get it in the air. It's not quite as easy as some of the smaller, but it's got an 80-foot wingspan. And you're looking at glide ratios of well over 50-to-1. Okay, there's the S6, a little less expensive, not quite as big, but also very good, and that's a newer model. Aircraft called the Typhoon. I don't know much about it. It's an older one. It's a metal aircraft. You have, I believe, a French one called the Fournier, and you got some specifications that are on there. I was able to find that. But there are some of those on the market. You can tell that it's got a folding wing, so it fits in the hangar. And by the way, the STEMIs also have folding wings. All right, the Grobe 109. All right, one of the more popular ones. They're around. A lot of flying clubs are using these as type certified. In fact, all of these so far have been type certified aircraft. Getting a little more modern. Okay, Diamond HK36. You've probably seen this around. Again, type certified. It takes it almost to the weight limit for gliders, and for type certified gliders, there is a weight limit. But performance is good. And the people who have flown it that I've talked to have really enjoyed the Diamond. I've not flown the Diamond. The Jamongo from Brazil, I believe. Air Force Academy used to use them as their glider trainer. I've flown the Jamongo. It is fairly heavy in comparison. to some of the new lighter composite aircraft that are on the market. All right, here's a nice one called the Sundancer. It has a lot in common with another one that we'll look at in a minute called the Phoenix. Sundancer is made in Czech Republic, or that may have moved out and gone to another country. I know that the Phoenix is built in Czech Republic, and I think the Sundancer is as well. Sundancer used to be over here in a model. You'll still find a few of them on the market, and it's essentially identical to the Lambada. And again, I was a dealer for Lambada when they first came out, had a flutter issue, and you'll notice that the speed limits on this are down, except on the flaperon version. And that was because of the flutter problem we had. I have had a partner in Texas. He is still alive, but he's moved to California. But he was in the Lambada and was having fun in some thermals, and a combination of the thermals and a speed that was up around 125 knots caused the tail boom to snap in two. He pulled the parachute. It was a non-event. He had no injuries at all. The aircraft was totaled, but when they inspected and looked at the cause, they slowed things down on the aircraft, and the allowable maximum speed has been reduced by quite a bit. The Phoenix, very similar to the Lambada and the Sundancer, a little bit bigger, same manufacturer, same designer, got a little more baggage room in there, slightly wider cockpit, but that's a beautiful aircraft. It's built in Czech Republic. Martin Stepanek is the builder. It's one of my favorites. Visibility is excellent, upward. It's got a 30-to-1 glide ratio. The wingtips come off, so you can put shorter wingtips on it if you want. Very nice. For the most part, I think they've got a nose wheel version, but most of them are tail wheel. They also have an electric that's out. I don't know if they're actually selling the electric, but they've shown it in some air shows. Again, a beautiful glider. It performs well, and with a low wing, you've got an aircraft that you can share thermals with, and that's one of the disadvantages of our pipistrels. Most of our pipistrel gliders are high wing, and that high wing is great for areas like Florida where you've got the sun beating down on you, gives you a little shade. But if you're thermaling, your upward visibility, even though we've got a small window in the roof, you still don't get good upward visibility, and it's not an aircraft you'd want to share, with 12 other aircraft in the same thermal. Okay. I have a question. You can't tell from this photo, but the wingtips come off. When the wingtips come off, you've got a 39-foot wingspan, so it'll fit in just about any standard T hangar. You can put short tips on it, and then you have a 40-foot span. It'll still, with the short tips on, it'll still fit in most hangars. And then with the long tips, you actually get the 28 to 29 to 1 glide ratio.
Hey, Rand, is this certified as a LSA as also?
This is available as experimental. If you didn't care about having an LSA, you could buy this experimental, and you could put in-flight adjustable prop on it. But the way most people buy it, it is SLSA, factory built. It comes with a feathering prop, and you'll see in a second. We'll have a short video, and it'll show how he feathers a prop. But yeah, this is a special light sport aircraft, so it can be used for flight training. And again, flight schools have even more flexibility, or not flight schools, clubs have even more flexibility. If you've not had the FAA or the AOPA presentation on how to set up a club, and of course you guys already have your own club, you probably got people who go out and give that presentation. But one of the guys from AOPA gave a presentation for us here in Florida, and it was excellent. a lot of my customers, I'd say about half the people who order aircraft from me order the Virus SW, and they put a 100 horsepower in it, and they put an in-flight adjustable prop, and they've got an aircraft that'll cruise well over 140 knots. And it's experimental, but the experimental tag scares a lot of folks off, but there really isn't a whole lot of limitations with it, except for it cannot be used in a commercial flight school. The difference between a light sport and experimental really is an A&P has to do the annual inspection. You can do all the work. He has to sign off your inspection in the book. Whereas a light sport repairman is easy to get, and I can do my own annuals when I'm working on a light sport aircraft. Okay, got a photo here that's one of my favorites. One of my customers, Gallo Villagomez, he was my first foreign customer. He ordered a tailwheel Virus, or actually Sinus with Sinus Flex with 2 different wingtips. He's got the short wingtip on it here. And if you can't quite tell what you're looking at, you're actually looking at the reflection on the underside of the wing let's see, what's the name of this mountain, this volcano? Okay, I don't have the name of the volcano, but it's, where did we go? Hold on. Okay, it's a volcano in Ecuador, and he flies out of a little airport that's at 9,000 feet elevation, and it's 500 meters long, so 1,500 feet, 20-foot wide runway, and he's in and out of there. And he takes his aircraft up to this photograph was taken from about 20,000 feet, looking down at the top of a 17,000 foot volcano. Okay, let me see if I can get this started. I've got a short video. Any questions before I just show a little video? Okay.
Zephyr Hills Municipal Airport. Automated weather observation 1647.
This will last about 7 minutes. If you have questions while this is going, don't hesitate to interrupt.
Scattered 4,500. Scattered 5,000. Scattered temperature 32.
A little background. I have a customer who comes over from Germany every couple of years, and he always takes a nice video when he comes over. This is from the Zephyr Hills Airport, and he flies my demonstrator. Takes his wife up. They do a tour somewhere in Florida. Here you've got the aircraft in a standard T hangar with wingtips off. See the wingtips over on the left?
Surveillance traffic, Motorgleiter Papa X-Ray, departing runway 23, surveillance.
His name is Helge Christensen. He's from the northern part of Germany.
Surveillance traffic, Motorgleiter Papa X-Ray, right crosswind 3, surveillance. Surveillance traffic, Motorgleiter Papa X-Ray, leaving right crosswind 23 northbound, surveillance.
Hold on a minute, please.
What's the motor in that thing?
The motor's a 80 horse Rotex.
80 horse what?
80 horsepower Rotex.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. The standard Virus and the Sinus, which this is, will not take more than 80 horsepower. They'll give you plenty of performance. The Virus SW comes with the optional 100 horse.
Do you typically fly it from the right seat?
Does somebody have a question?
Rand,
Yes.
is that prop was it fully feathered?
It's not quite fully feathered, but that's the way it's set up. Yeah.
Okay.
It reduces.
Surveillance traffic, Motorgleiter
Yes.
Yeah.
X-ray,
Thank you.
4 miles north, 45 to the right downwind 3, surveillance.
Yeah, for you guys who've been to Zephyr Hills, you're probably familiar with this.
Surveillance traffic, Motorgleiter Papa X-Ray, final 2-3, full stop.
Paul
landing,
Rulli asks,
surveillance.
does he normally fly it from the right seat rather than the left?
A lot of pilots like to have the control stick in their right hand. A lot of glider pilots are used to air brake in the left hand, control stick in the right. So a lot of glider pilots will fly right seat. I fly either side.
Thanks.
Are there any hills at Zephyr Hills?
Very few at Zephyr Hills, but just north we do have some hills. That's where I live.
Surveillance traffic, Motorgleiter Papa X-Ray, clear of runway 23, surveillance.
Okay. That concludes the actual formal presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Brandon, I got a question on flying the Sinus. You need to have a LSA ticket, is that correct?
Negative. You can fly it as a sport pilot if you have but you still need a glider rating, and a glider rating can come in a sport pilot version or a private pilot version. The only real difference is if you've already got an airplane rating, you can get some training with an instructor in the glider, and then you can take a check ride with another instructor, and you'll probably save a little bit of money doing it that way. The time and the flight requirements are essentially the same. You don't have to take a written test, but most of I've had one customer get a sport glider rating from me. Everybody else out of 100 students I've had has opted for the private glider rating. The advantage of the private pilot glider rating, the sport ability is a subordinate rating, so that if you're a glider pilot first and then you don't have a medical but you want to get a sport pilot airplane, then that's just a matter of getting a check ride with another flight instructor. You don't have to go through a designated pilot examiner, if that makes sense. Most people opt to go ahead and get the private pilot glider. If you're already an airplane pilot and your glider is equipped with lights, even if it's a light sport aircraft, you can still fly it at night. So your night flight, and if you're flying a light sport aircraft and you're a private pilot, then you're not limited to 10,000 feet. That's a sport pilot. That's the rating for the pilot limitation, not the aircraft.
How about ADSB?
ADSB is not required for gliders, but it's required if you're within the Vail or in any kind of Class C or B airspace. So most people get ADSB. I think we're flying with almost all the aircraft that we sell now are equipped with transponders. If you get a touring motor glider, it really makes sense to have ADSB. It's gotten pretty inexpensive and it sure is helpful. So yeah, almost all of them will come with ADSB now.
Do they come equipped with relief tubes for that long distance flight?
It did not. My secret was Gatorade. It's good to replenish the electrolytes, and it's got a nice wide open top, and it helped me make a 10-hour trip. My recommendation is don't buy the yellow Gatorade, and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Most of that trip was at 12,500 and so, or 13, some of it was even 13.5. So you never know what hypoxia is going to do to you. So don't take any chances.
So your track wasn't tracked by blue bags along the ground, huh?
No. Just sealed containers of yellow liquid. Anyway, it was a good flight. I tell this story, and I don't tell it for any reason other than it's a little bit amusing. I came in high on purpose, and it was starting to get dark, and I didn't have lights on my first demonstrator, and that was what I was flying. And so I was at economy cruise, and I knew I was going to make it easily. But when I put it back up to 5,200 RPM at normal cruise, it burned a lot more fuel the last hour that I was flying. And I didn't run out of fuel until I was on short final. At that point, I feathered the prop and glided halfway down the runway, so I didn't have to push too far. But that trip took the full amount of 24.5 gallons of usable fuel. I won't do that again, but I knew I had it made because I came in at about 7,000 feet.
How long did that take you?
It was right at 10 hours, start to finish. And I had a good average, about 20 to 25 knot tailwind. And I was at economy cruise the whole way. So you have 10 hours endurance at economy cruise.
Do you have rental Sinuses down there?
I rent my demonstrator to students. I don't advertise it as a rental. I do pay extra insurance so that I can have students doing their first solo. So yeah, I can rent it out. That's not a major part of my business. Normally it's for people like my German friend who does videos for me. He comes over and he'll rent it for a day or two and put 5 or 6 hours on it. And that's fine. My students build their hours in it. They get all their landings in it. They do solo and they do instruction with me. I don't have it set up as a rental that's available all the time, but anybody who flies with me is able to rent the aircraft. Yeah.
So for clubs who have one of these, what are they typically charging for flight hour?
I charge $125 an hour wet for the aircraft and $75 an hour for my time as a flight instructor. That's a little higher than a lot of light sport. The aircraft is a little more expensive. The glider runs $150,000 to $190,000 new. The one I've got now is about $165,000 aircraft. I've got it configured pretty nicely. It's a Virus SW, the short wing, but it has a feathering prop. It flies nicely as a glider for training. It doesn't have as good a glide ratio. You're looking at 17-to-1 glide ratio. But so rates are about $200 an hour wet, and a new pilot who hasn't flown before can expect to get a private pilot glider rating for between $4,000 and $5,000 total.
I have a somewhat unrelated question.
Sure.
Is the Diamond Extreme the same as the HK-36?
I don't know that it's exactly the same, but they're essentially the same aircraft. Yes.
Thank you.
I think one was an earlier model, and I think the Diamond Extreme was the US labeling. I think the HK-36 came first, and that was what in Europe, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question on the Virus short wing with 100 horsepower. You said you have full feathering prop on that unit that you have presently. Did I hear right?
You didn't understand right. I put an 80 horsepower in mine, so I do not have the 100 in my Virus SW. The 80 horsepower has a very nice, very efficient prop. That same prop can't be used on 100 horsepower. So typically when 100 horsepower comes out, you've got one of three options. You can have a manual in-flight adjustable prop that also feathers. But that is, I think, from Woodcomp. Woodcomp also has electronic controlled prop. We've had some trouble with that one. We don't recommend that anymore. So either manual Woodcomp or a partially feathering, but not feathering. I'm sorry. What is it called? I'm drawing a blank. If it's not electric prop control? It's so hydraulic. I guess a hydraulic prop control, where we have a prop that the factory puts on, and I'm trying to remember the name of the prop. It's not Woodcomp. It is, well, it has a different prop, and it is not fully feathering. 3 of my customers have put on a prop from Airmaster that with Whirlwind blades and Airmaster hub, and it is a fully feathering electronic 3-blade prop, and it's nice. They love it. It's a little heavier, and it's not inexpensive. It's about $9,500 to have it installed, but it provides a better prop. It's quieter. It's got the very nice leading edge, nickel plated leading edge on the prop blades, and people who have switched over to that are very happy with it. And they've got experimental aircraft, so they can pretty much do whatever they want.
So as a follow-on to what I'd asked about on the prop, and I appreciate the in-depth explanation of what's possible.
Okay.
Short wing unit, if a person wanted to order it with 100 horsepower and have something that is fully feathering, as well as in-flight adjustable pitch to optimize cruise and climb. The last add-on to the question is, can you get long wings to put on that short wing bird
No, the answer is no. We have a model called the Virus, which came out before the Virus SW. The Virus has about a 40-foot span. When you get the longer wing, you start getting the potential for flutter. And that's the main reason that they limit the speed. Now, if you're light sport, then you're limited by rule. And even my aircraft, which was designed for a VNE of 163 knots, being a short wing, it has a VNE of 120 knots by rule because it's a glider, and it's in the light sport category. If you put the 100 horsepower on, normally you're going to be registering the aircraft as experimental, and then you don't have the limitations on what type prop to put on.
Right, but would the wing fit on if a person had enough sense to fly it at reasonable airspeeds? If you wanted to fly long wing on a aircraft that was originally produced short wing and let's say licensed as a sailplane, is it possible?
I'm sure it's possible. I don't know that anybody has done that. The person who would probably know best is Robert Mudd. He's our technical guru out in New Mexico. And that's a question I can ask him. I know that the factory would highly discourage it, but I think the wing roots and spars are essentially the same. So I'm pretty sure it would be possible to do it. I don't think the factory would want anybody to do it, but I think it can be. Yeah.
Appreciate your candor very much.
Well, any other questions? Certainly, my number is 813-774-2127. If you ever have a question, don't hesitate to call or send me an email at rand@pipistrel-usa.com. But I've enjoyed talking to you guys. And if you get down to Tampa area, please give me a call and let's go flying.
Well, Rand, I want to thank you for participating in our hangar flying session this morning. It was a great presentation. I think everybody enjoyed it, and thanks again for participating.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.